Hey loves, today I want to talk about sitar style that you can apply to guitar. If you've listened to any ragas or Indian style music with the sitar, you'll notice that it has a droning tone usually. There's many there's many forms of ragas, but for the most part, they traditionally have a droning sort of tone. A droning tone refers to pretty much the same lower bass note. So if I'm playing it here, I'm just gonna so droning. Just have that sort of thing going on the whole time, where it's the same tone. This is an E. This is an E, and this is an E. So it has that lower note going the whole time. And actually, let me explain how my acoustic guitar right here is set up right now. I have this is set up in D standard tuning. So it's actually, this is a D, and then we have G, C, and then F, A, and then the high D. So it's the E standard a whole step down. Okay? But as I talk through this, I'm actually going to just refer to it as if it was E standard, because that typically will get the point across a little bit more readily, I think, for anybody that might be watching or approaching this sort of style. So I'm going to actually call this an E, just like I did previously, instead of the D tone that it actually is. Okay, so there's a couple different things that I see when I try to emulate the sitar sound. And I think one thing that really stands out is actually, a lot of people, when they hear Indian music, they try to do scales like this. And that sounds really exotic and really beautiful. But it seems to me that, for the most part, when I started listening to Ravi Shankar and started emulating some of his stuff, I started realizing that he sticks to a major scale, and so it's very, very just technical or traditional pattern, just a major scale. So if I'm here, I'm going to go 7th fret, and then 9th fret, and then 6 on the D string, 7, 9, and then 6, 8, and then 9. So, and so a couple other things I am doing to achieve, this sort of sound. I'm using my thumb to pluck all my notes, and I'm really allowing the guitar to breathe. So if I just do something like this, if you can, I'm not sure if the mic is picking it up, but it's like you hear all these tones just ringing out, and I think that's really interesting because when your note is whoops. Okay, so there's a lot. I feel like maybe you can't hear it as well, but I feel like there's so many other tones going on because I'm not choking the strings. I'm not just muting all the strings, right? I'm just letting, as opposed to, what I'm saying? Instead of choking all the other strings and muting them. So major scale. So here we go. If I'm playing, and I will do a little bit of a mood just in the major scale, and so here we go. So. So always when I'm doing these melodies, I'm ending up on just landing back home to that E note, to that drone, and I'm just letting that drone just sit, you know. And anytime I have a little space in between the melody, I'll pop that drone in again. So. I'm doing some bends, I'm doing some slides, I'm doing some hammer-ons, all techniques that the sitar uses. Let me actually correct that. I don't believe the sitar uses slides as often as guitar players would, but you would hear that sort of slide style in their bends, because whereas the guitar can bend half steps and whole steps, bending a whole and a half is oftentimes a bit tougher on the guitar than it is on the sitar. But you can hear that I'm doing these little half bends quite often. This one's especially nice, and I like to end with it. Because it's actually bending up to that droning note, to that E. In this case, referring to E. Okay, so a couple other things that I want to talk about. Pretty much just one more thing is a way to make it sound even more unique, and that is by using, I guess we can call it an accidental, but I don't think it's by accident. It would be in classical music, it would be called an accidental. So let's go up the E major scale one more time. So instead of hitting this seventh interval, so if we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we're back to tonic, we're going to take this seventh interval and actually flatten it. So let's hear that scale now. So there's something about that sounded even, just, getting a little exotic there, just a little bit. But now if we use both scales in conjunction with each other, we start to get a real sense of the play of the melody, and it almost sounds just a lot more thematic, as if there was a story happening here. And I think that's an important element when you're dealing with drones is, droning tones, is your melodies really want to have a story, and it really does, having the drone really does open you up to a lot of different melodic and using different scales, just different ways of playing things off of each other, because you don't have a whole chord backing you up, or even a complicated chord or something. You have just the one tone underneath, and that allows for a lot more exploration with the melodies. So now I'm going to play the major scale, and also the major scale with the flattened seventh, and have those in conjunction with each other. And after I do this, we'll talk. I'll explain a little bit more about how those work together and against each other and for each other. So here we go. there. But either way, I think you could hear a bit of the change. I think within that sort of passage. You know, I started off with the major scale, and then once I concretely solidified that you're listening to the major scale, I started adding in the. And you can actually do some bends on that one up to that flattened seventh. Or the hammer-ons are always nice. So pretty much what I'm trying to show here is when I'm playing, I want to solidify a scale, just like I'm doing here, and then try to have a different sort of scale to bring about a different part of the story. Very conversational, and I think that's something that, you know, obviously jazz music has in common with the sitar style Indian music. So in my, you know, limited knowledge of, you know, of ragas and of the sitar, this is what I've come up with just through using my ears and trying to play along with Ravi Shankar or you know, any number of other players. And this is, if actually you go on YouTube and type in sitar, guitar, and, you know, players, gosh, there are some amazing ones out there, you know, ones that use a slide to really emulate the sitar. It's beautiful, it's inspiring, it's amazing. But this is kind of what I have come to in this. And one more thing, when I'm using this scale with the flattened seventh, I use that to come down to tonic. I'm going, and then when I want to go to the higher tonic, the higher E, I use that major scale. If I use the flattened seventh to come up, it would sound not as crisp, I believe. There's something a little less resolving about that as compared to that sounds resolved. And when you're coming back down, it doesn't sound bad to use the sharpened seventh, just the major seventh. Sorry, I wouldn't be sharpened. It would just be the major seventh. But, you know, so when you're coming down, that sounds fine to use that major seventh. But I think using the flattened seventh when you're coming in a downward melody just wants you to, you know, come home. Wants you to bring it down home to this note. Coming up. Gotta keep it up there. And then I want to bring it back down. And I can use this major seventh to bring it on home. I bent it up to the... Anyway, so that was my little lesson on sitar style that you can play on the guitar, and actually it can be a lot of fun and really, like I was saying earlier, you can explore a lot of different sorts of melodies and sort of juxtapositions of scales, and even just changing one note, just like I did with that seventh interval, changing it from a major seventh to a flattened seventh, and just a very nice thing when you start to juxtapose those scales and hear the story and even using them to, you know, have certain character elements. Yes. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Thanks again. Evan Jones, as always, for Simple Notes Music. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.